in the world of daily fantasy sports and even regular fantasy sports. I'll go there. I'm Chris Spags, joined as always by the top DFS player in the world, the man behind all the projections and data we have at Osmo.com, Alex Osmo Baker. How are you doing, Alex?
Doing great, man. I'm really looking forward to this week. We got some great contests out there. I have a feeling that there's a great chance to win some Hooters wings this week again, so gotta love it.
Yeah, we're always counting those Hooters wings every single week after our successes from the NFL slates. And we are also joined again by a man who's been around the DFS community for a while, very popular figure to a lot of circles out there, the Siege, CJ Kaltenbach. How are you doing, CJ?
I'm doing good, Chris. How are you?
I'm good. We're excited to have you here, and welcome to On the Contrary. Hopefully you brought your hottest takes possible. I know you are a bit of a hot take machine.
I was going to say, this show sounds like it's exactly designed for me, so this should be good.
We've just been waiting for you to fill that third seat the whole time. But real fast, of course, On the Contrary is brought to you by FantasyDraft.com every single week. And it's the official home of rake-free DFS. If you are paying rake on the sites you are right now, you are losing money. And that's not the way you should be approaching this. If you're trying to build your bankroll, you're being a smart DFS player. So right now, go to FantasyDraft.com and use the promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, for a free 7-day trial into the world of rake-free DFS. Alex, you already teased it. You already talked about the Hooters wings. But how many wings did you have bought with the rake you paid across the industry this week?
Yeah, I mean, across the industry, like, dude, I would weigh like 1,000 pounds if I had all the wings that I would have saved if there was no rake. So maybe it's not a good idea to spend all this money you're saving on fantasy draft on wings, but at least maybe a little bit of it can go to your wing budget.
Yeah, so go to FantasyDraft.com right now. Also, Tangent, we are getting people in the chat congratulating you on your big win yesterday, which I didn't know if you took it down or not, but you had some big basketball money yesterday, Alex?
Yeah, man, pretty nice night. I just had some good luck go my way, so thanks for all the congratulations there.
Was Neto in the lineup?
No, man, I was so off Neto on a Siege. Did you eat the chalk there?
No, absolutely not. I was I was begging Adam to get off of NATO. I was just like, this is a bad idea, right?
He was a fine play. He opened up all the other stuff. If you had gone to Trey and Russell and all those guys with Neto, you would have had a nice day, I think. I'm Team Neto. I won't stand for this Neto slander on this NFL show.
I just the minutes. I just was not convinced on the minutes.
Well, either way, guys, go to FantasyDraft.com, use that promo code Osmo, and thank you to Fantasy Draft for helping us put on the show every week. So, CJ, you got a lot of stuff going on. You obviously have been in a lot of high-profile sites. Your exits from some sites have also been fairly high-profile. So, what are you working on right now? What should people be checking you out on currently?
Yeah, so for all our season-long stuff's going to stay on Arbor Pro. So that's the site that I run. All of our high-stakes season-long stuff, and honestly, it can help you win like all your local leagues. Our subs are having a fantastic season. I'm having a fantastic season so far in seasonal. And then for DFS, I'm moving it over all to Cruncher. Dave finally has conned me into doing it for Cruncher. I love FC, so it was a natural fit. So doing all my DFS stuff, starting with NBA over there. So you can find me in Fantasy Cruncher Discord basically at all hours of the day or night.
That's awesome. Yeah, Fantasy Cruncher, of course, a partner of ours at Osmo.com. You do a great job. Alex, obviously loves Fantasy Cruncher as much as anybody out there. If you check out his game plan live streams for the NBA, you can see Alex's process for the NBA. But CJ, also, I have to ask you, so you are on the show, I know, and you are a guy who also takes everything in stride, so I feel like it's okay to ask you this question compared to some other people out there who might be a bit softer, but how does it feel sometimes to be like you've gone from like people love your content and have for years, but also a lot of people out there have trolled you real hard, trolled you about the ways that you do things on Twitter. Like, how does the DFS community feel to you as somebody who's felt both the love and also the toxic side?
It depends on the day of the week you're asking me, right? Sometimes people go over the top, and it's the internet, right? People going over the top, that's really not breaking news. But most of the time it's fun. Most of the time it's nice. But like everything else, there's bad apples, but it's mostly enjoyable.
Yeah, look, you keep a positive attitude, and that's all you can do. But on these shows here, we always try to encourage positivity. So we're glad to have CG on board. We're also glad to have you guys on board right now watching. Of course, if you want access to all the data that we're going to talk about over the course of the next hour, go right now to osmo.com/join and use the promo code contrary. Give you half off your first month of Osmo Plus. So go right now to osmo.com/join. You can also find packages as low as $3.95 a week on there. So go check it out right now at osmo.com/join. All right, guys, let's get right into it here. We got one game with possibly the highest implied total of the year for one side, Atlanta at New Orleans. New Orleans highest implied total of the week. Again, they also have some of the chalkiest but best projected players according to Alex's projections. So Alex, I will ask you first, with Matt Ryan back and theoretically should be able to keep it more competitive. You know, the Vegas line hasn't moved much for the support of Matt Ryan. How are you feeling about New Orleans, and do you think New Orleans is a must-have this week?
Yeah, I mean, from the lines, you gotta think maybe this game won't be super competitive because New Orleans is a 13-point favorite, and that makes me a little hesitant to stack up New Orleans as far as the game stack. But Atlanta does pass the ball so much that it makes Matt Ryan pretty appealing on a week-to-week basis. And you got guys like Michael Thomas, like Alvin Kamara, who are going to be super chalky, and with a projected total of 32. There's going to be some touchdowns for New Orleans this week.
CJ, how are you feeling about it here? We got some Saints players. Michael Thomas been going nuts. Alvin Kamara coming back. Maybe going to lose a little bit of workload to Latavius Murray. He commented to the media this week that he wouldn't mind if that's the case, but who knows how much. Where are you shaking out the Saints, and which plays you prefer more than the others?
I mean, let me start. I want to start on Atlanta. I think Atlanta is getting no respect here, like none. This is a dome game for Matt Ryan and this offense coming off the bye. Like, I know that their season's over, but if they have any pride, they're going to show up in this spot. And it's not like the Saints can't get beat in the secondary by these playmakers. So I think I'm higher on Atlanta, which leads me to just want all of the Saints as well, like Michael Thomas, Brees, and Kamara. Like, I kind of want to stack this game up. I think it's not getting enough love.
Which parts of Atlanta are you feeling the most? Obviously, Julio going to face some tough coverage against Marshawn Lattimore, but he can beat any situation. And Devonta Freeman should be involved too, but that Saints run defense has picked up quite a bit. Marcus Davenport pretty nasty inside. So which Falcons would you be the most interested in here if you're building them as a main stack, running it back with Saints players?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with Ridley and Hooper here for all the reasons you mentioned. Freeman does have that tough matchup against the Saints run D, and Julio does draw Marcus Lattimore coverage, which he has beaten before. But I think I would rather just go ahead and take some of the cheaper pieces in this game and kind of have the Saints be the expensive pieces that I plug in. Because if Atlanta is able to score, then it kind of obviously boosts the ceiling of all those Saints players as well. And if you're playing Saints, like for them to hit their ceilings, realistically, Atlanta has to put up some points too.
Yeah, that makes sense. Alex, how are you feeling about Atlanta? Because very low implied total. Your projections seem okay for them, maybe not stellar. But where are you shaking out with Atlanta's side, and who would be the guys you'd want the most there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Atlanta is in a pretty rough spot versus tough defense here, so just kind of going off the numbers. Well, actually, New Orleans defense, they've given up about average yardage this year, so I don't hate it. But this team total under 20 is pretty concerning. And these guys aren't cheap. I mean, these are all guys with pretty high salaries in Julio, Calvin Ridley, and Austin Hooper. So that makes it a little hard to stomach paying up for this game, especially if it will be popular.
You think Atlanta's going to be popular?
Yeah. I mean, more popular than they ought to be, I think. I mean, we have Matt Ryan projected for around 5% ownership. Team with the 20-team total. I'll just keep going back to that, and I have them. I mean, it's just really expensive to get to these guys.
How are you feeling about Russell Gage? Because I want to throw him out as a potential value play. I the assumption that I had, and I think some people had, was that we might see more slot routes for Calvin Ridley, maybe some more for Julio in that last game. Now there's no Mohamed Sanu. But Gage took over a lot of the work, not highly targeted, but he is a player who could see less oppressive coverage. So, Alex, I'll ask you first, did you have any interest at all in Russell Gage in a spot where he's not going to be owned, and he does open up some value if he has any sort of success here?
Yeah, what I look at as far as trying to predict these guys who are newer on the rotation, of course, with Sanu getting traded, Gage has come in, gotten targeted 17 times out of 89 routes, so that's a pretty high clip. That would mean that he'd probably get around 5 targets this week, but yeah, it's still a little bit hard to get there. He hasn't been doing much with these targets so far, and he doesn't really cross that threshold of minimum fantasy points I'm looking for.
Siege, would you have any interest at all in Russell Gage here as potentially a lower owned, very cheap pivot to open up some salary?
Only if I got super desperate in a game stack. I mean, he had 9 targets in his lone start, but that feels a little high, and the A dot was basically nothing. So, I mean, I don't know how he falls into a touchdown with all those other red zone options. So I can't get there.
That seems fair. Let's talk a little bit more about the New Orleans side, because we are going to have a very chalky Drew Brees, one of the highest owned QBs of the week. Alvin Kamara going to be very highly owned. Michael Thomas going to be very highly owned. Thomas, you would assume, has a really good spot here. Ted Ginn not picking up as much ownership, but you would think that he'd see some deep targets here. He didn't have a great start in that last game in which Drew Brees returned, but he has the at least ability to catch deep passes now, unlike with Teddy Bridgewater in there, given that he's just basically throwing it underhand 5 yards at every single time. But how are we feeling about the pass game options here, Alex? Who are the guys you'd want to be above the field on and under the field on, given that these guys are going to be all very chalky?
Yeah, I think there's some good options on New Orleans for sure. Michael Thomas, one of the top options. He's been having a crazy season, and the main thing I'm looking at here, he's been targeted 89 times on 322 routes, so that's about 27% of the time he's on the field. That's one of the highest marks in the league, and he's on the field almost every play. So this is a pretty consistent stream of targets. Of course, Atlanta probably needs to stay in this game for Thomas to have a truly exceptional performance for his price, but the potential is huge.
Siege, all right, so you can only pick one guy. We have a really esoteric hostage taker who's putting a gun to your head and saying you can only pick one of Alvin Kamara or Michael Thomas. Which of those two would you want more?
Boy, that's tough. I mean, Kamara is probably going to lose work to Latavius Murray, but this is the first time since basically week 1 that the entire Saints wide receiver core is healthy too. I'm probably taking Michael Thomas, but I'm not feeling great about it. I'm probably starting to do some Hail Marys on that one.
I mean, look, the guy took you hostage. What are you going to do? It's his fault, not yours.
Yeah.
So one thing I do want to bring up for Atlanta real fast, because we have seen this spot happen a couple times this year. Chris Carson was very popular at, I think, 20 plus touches for sure in that one game he had. Didn't have a big day. Atlanta's run defense, the one part of their defense that's really not that bad, 77 grade from PFF in their run defense, only giving up 3.8 yards per rush on the year. Yards per rush, not a perfect stat, but it is an indicator of what they've done. So, Alex, I'll ask you, would you have any hesitation at all with Alvin Kamara, given the fact that Atlanta's run defense has looked solid on paper, but the team total is still what it is?
I think the hesitation would come more from the fact that if the Saints have scored a couple touchdowns, it's probably hard for Kamara to stay on the field as opposed to Latavius Murray. Most Atlanta puts up some big points, but I think that going into this game it's a little bit sneakier than I was letting on to. I just updated my top stacks tool, so I see that the Atlanta stack, Ryan has about 5% ownership. I have about a 9% chance of them being the top stack of the week, so that's pretty nice compared to the ownership. On the other side, or on the contrary side, yeah, I kind of
nailed
that
it.
one.
Branding.
That was pretty rough. Anyway, Brees is second highest owned quarterback according to our ownership, and I only have that. It's around the chance of them being the top stack of the week. Although these plays are great in individual capacity, the chance that this game goes off with such an unbalanced line is a little bit less than other games.
Interesting. Okay. Another game, let's keep it going here, because this is also an important game that could also be unbalanced. Baltimore at Cincinnati. Lamar Jackson went off against Cincinnati in week 6, over 230 passing yards, 150 rushing yards, almost 20 rushing attempts. Took all the value off the table for everybody else in that game, but went nuts himself. Now he's on the road going against Cincinnati, highest price QB, but Alex, according to your projections, also the best value QB despite that high price. So how are you shaking out Lamar? And I think the best parallel to me would be Russell Wilson last week, where he seemed a little bit high priced, but you had to have him to win a tournament last week. Are you feeling Lamar might be in that kind of spot?
I think Lamar is a great cash play because he represents so much of the offense, being the best rusher on the team and also the only guy throwing the ball, of course. So I think that the real question mark is, can Cincinnati hang in this game? Ryan Finley has replaced Andy Dalton, much to my chagrin here. I was hoping to have the red rifle in my arsenal one more week, but I think that it's going to be a little bit hard for Lamar Jackson to really have the highest score of the week because as soon as Baltimore is up big in this game, he's probably not going to be able to. He's not going to be getting the rushes, and probably guys like Mark Ingram and Gus Edwards will kind of chew clock.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. By the way, Alex, I'm playing you in our Awesemo charity league with all of our celebrity friends this week, and I had to pick up Gus Edwards because I don't want to play LaShawn McCoy. so I'm hoping you're right there, and this game becomes a gigantic blowout with Gus Edwards running for 200 yards. We'll find out. Siege, how are you feeling about Lamar here? Lamar dominating, as Alex mentioned, dominating the Baltimore offense, but maybe in a spot here where Cincinnati's going to have a really hard time keeping up.
I got to be honest, I just haven't rostered much Lamar this season. I've had trouble just hitting the button on him because I just do feel like that with any of these running quarterbacks, I kind of need it to be a two-way street. Last week against New England, that was kind of a two-way street game, and he was able to, but he only still put up 29 DraftKings points, even despite that. For me, I think there's just other better quarterbacks on the board. I think this is a good Mark Ingram rebound spot. Cincinnati's just awful against the run. I think that they're going to want to keep Lamar healthy. It's kind of a mini short week coming off of that Sunday night big win. Kind of a letdown spot here. I think they're just going to run Mark Ingram up the middle a bunch, win by 20, and go back home. So I'm not really on Lamar this week at all.
How about the Cincinnati side? I guess, I'm assuming you guys seem like you're not thinking this game stays close. I don't think we have a ton of Ryan Finley faith. But A.J. Green back in that lineup, possibly on a limited snap count. We don't really know the full details on that yet.
He got ruled out, by the way, this morning.
Oh, did he? Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, this afternoon. It's just 40 minutes ago he got ruled out.
Oh, damn. Well, I was so in prep mode for this. Well, never mind then. Well, I guess, does that open up anything more? Because I think, is Boyd? Yeah, Boyd's price is down a little bit, maybe for the matchup or for Green's return. So I guess, are we feeling any of the receivers here? I think Boyd had a well-targeted game the last time they played. Auden Tate was also involved. Any of these guys, CJ, looking good to you in the pass game?
No. I'm looking at it really simple. No.
Alex, how about you?
I could see landing on him. I mean, Tyler Boyd, of course, one of my favorite guys that I've lost a ton of money on this year. I think if AJ Green came back, that would kind of make me not as confident at any of these guys. But Alex Erickson's pretty cheap. Auden Tate is pretty cheap. Tyler Boyd's a little bit more, so I'll probably lean towards Erickson and Tate, since these three guys are they're pretty consistently on the field for the whole game, so they got a pretty short rotation in Cincinnati, and they're going to have to throw the ball. Whether it works or not remains to be seen, but we've seen Cincinnati receivers put up big games week after week. It's hard to predict the right one.
Yeah, and it's possible too. There's always a narrative thing. Second team guys moving into the starting rotation or starting lineup rather. And Alex Erickson, I'm sure seeing a lot of him in that second team. So maybe he keeps his random heater here. But your projections have it pretty well distributed. The AJ Green thing is so didn't he just have an ankle or a foot issue? How has he been out this long? It's baffling.
Because he's sitting out till he's a free agent.
Yeah, but he was he had the platitudes about wanting to stay and stuff in the preseason. It's all so strange. That team is such a disaster.
Let me tell you something, man. It's the hottest takes that burn you the most. I have 80% AJ Green in season-long best balls. I'm not liking it.
Yeah, I have him in one of mine too, and I've been just waiting there, holding on to that roster spot, and he's just never going to play, it seems.
Yeah.
So that's good. Good investment by all of us, I'm sure.
Dude, he's breadcrumbing us too. It's every week he's oh, maybe he'll come back, but no, he never does.
Breadcrumbing and gaslighting us is what they're doing. All the bad fun combo words in there are not going well with AJ Green. But all right, well, let's keep it going here. Carolina at Green Bay. Christian McCaffrey's price has taken another leap in what seems to be his best run defense matchup. Green Bay's run defense has been beaten by a lot of teams so far. The field is projected for about 25% ownership. And it's a tough question. It is a bit of a Sophie's choice question. Do you build more balance, or do you just pay up for McCaffrey and hope you can figure it out? Siege, I'll ask you first. How do you feel about this high-priced McCaffrey, and are you going to be there above the field or under the 25% this week?
This really just depends on where I decide to come down on lineup construction. McCaffrey is obviously a great time every time he touches the football, but at this price now, we're basically looking at 30 to 33 fantasy points to make value. And I know Green Bay is a great matchup for running backs and especially pass-catching backs against that linebacking core, but that's a really tough sell for me, just given the quality of the top-end wide receivers this week. I'd probably end up underweight on McCaffrey, but last week, it could easily just make me want to cry by 2 o'clock. So I probably will end up underweight, but it's nothing to do with his talent. More kind of, I just like the wide receivers more.
Alex, how are you shaking out here? McCaffrey was 10K on DraftKings last week, ended up 4X value, which a really nice spot for him. How are you feeling about McCaffrey in the spot here in his best matchup with the price up yet again?
Man, it's hard to put out an ambivalent take with a fantasy monster like McCaffrey here, but I really could go either way as well. I mean, it's just like the price is so high, and he's the best fantasy producer this year. So I think that if you can find the value to pair with him, then by all means throw him in. I don't know if this week is really great for value yet, but there are always developments down the line. And the matchup is fine versus Green Bay, but not excellent. Carolina as a team isn't projected to score that many points, so there's some easy ways this goes wrong.
Yeah, well, I mean, the value is really in the Ryan Finley, Alex Erickson stack, I would think.
That's right. If you have the Finley-Erickson combo, then McCaffrey, just lock him in.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it's a very contrarian approach if you are going to own Christian McCaffrey. How about the other side here? Aaron Jones going against this Carolina defense, which has been kind of a run funnel for running backs where the secondary really strong, a really oppressing wide receiver production, but giving up a ton of production on the run game. We saw it last week with Derrick Henry going nuts there in the second half in particular, as he does. Old garbage time Derrick Henry. But how are we feeling about Aaron Jones here coming off of a brutal spot? He has bounced back well from these brutal spots. Alex, how are you shaking out on Aaron Jones?
I mean, Aaron Jones, he had a big week the other week, I think, but his price has gone up to compensate for that. I'm still a little worried that Jamal Williams has more of a role than we'd like when we're taking Jones. And, I mean, the spot versus Carolina is terrific, but it's hard to feel really excited about picking Jones for me.
Siege, how do you feel about Aaron Jones here? Again, coming off a really down spot. He does tend to rebound well from those. Obviously, a small data sample there. But where are you shaking out with Aaron Jones?
So I'm going to ask you a question. How many 100-yard rushing games do you think Aaron Jones has had this season?
Rushing, it might be 0 because he's had the big games with the pass catching, but I would say 1.
Yeah, he's got 2. He's got 1 at 107 and 1 at 116. And then if you look at his other games, he's got, 6 games with under 51 rushing yards, or 50 or less. So he's really a lot more boom bust than people give him credit for. I just don't trust Green Bay with Devontae Adams back to give him the rock enough to make him a good play at this price. So I'm out.
Would you then want to go to Adams, given the fact that people probably won't be on him because that Carolina defense has been oppressive to wide receivers, and that could be a bit of a wrinkle there to go to him?
It's possible I end up there. For me, I just have not thought Green Bay was as good as people thought they were the whole season. And last week kind of just exposed every flaw I thought they had. So it's really tough for me to kind of be like, all right, now I'm just going to come back and load up on Devontae Adams in this game. I could see how this game shoots out, but there's another receiver in the 6Ks that I just kind of can't say no to as my sneaky receiver.
Oh, way to do that radio tease, Siege. I like that. Alex, how about you? Any interest in the Green Bay passing offense here, given that they're going to be pretty contrarian and Aaron Rodgers is still Aaron Rodgers in any matchup?
Yeah, I'm interested. I think Adams coming back is huge if you want to take Rodgers because they had been doing a rotation between the other guys where none of them were seeing really consistent snaps. Now that's still true, but Adams is seeing the field for most of the game and coming off a week where he's coming back from injury. I think he'll be full strength here. So I think with the variance you see at the wide receiver position, he's a great play. Especially if people are going to Jones. And I also Rodgers is a little bit higher owned than I'd like, but I'm more interested in the other side with Kyle Allen. He's not a terrific passer, but Green Bay's pass defense hasn't been great this year. And I'm really zeroing in on DJ Moore here. He's getting tons of targets. His price is at a moderate level. And if everyone thinks that the production is going to McCaffrey, which it has to this point, I think that there are going to be some games where Carolina just has to throw the ball 40 times, and that could be a big game for Moore or Samuel.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then Moore and Samuel, two players have gotten a lot of love across the industry, I feel like, because their prices just don't seem to move up with all the pricing apparently going to McCaffrey. Siege, how are you feeling about the Carolina pass game here and Kyle Allen maybe being sneaky in a spot against Green Bay's secondary? As you mentioned, maybe not as good as it seemed.
Yeah, I'm quite high on these guys as well. I'm just kind of concerned that like every time they get inside the 20, it's like, all right, McCaffrey run to the right, McCaffrey run to the left, McCaffrey screen, quarterback draw. Like they won't really get the wide receivers involved. They only have 4 wide receiver touchdowns this year between the two of them. That's a bit concerning when I'm looking for GPP winning upside. But their prices are starting to get cheap enough where like 22 points is fine for Samuel. So the pricing is starting to get to about the point where I can do it, but it's really hard for me to see one of these guys just like putting up 35.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, they do get enough deep targets, Samuel in particular, and Green Bay has struggled a bit with deep targets. I believe they give up the most 20-plus yard passes in the league, which kind of a surprise given how they performed well relatively. But yeah, there could be some value in these guys here, not terrible prices for Carolina. So certainly interesting. I have to ask about Greg Olson as well, just because tight end is really a disgusting spot this week, it seems. And Olson is going to have some ownership on him. So Siege, any interest at all in Olson as a tight end play who's saving you some money?
Yeah, he just hasn't really gotten it together since that first game with Kyle Allen. Like it's just been nothing since. We're looking at like 4 targets, 2 targets, 7 targets, 2 targets, 5 targets, no games with over 60 receiving yards and no touchdowns. It just feels like he's not a part of the Kyle Allen like route tree, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it certainly has more of a rapport with Cam Newton where he's definitely the safety blanket for Cam a bit more. Alex, would you play any Greg Olson this week, given that he's cheap and, he does have upside, whether we see it every week or not? It is there somewhere deep inside of him.
Yeah, I think that Olson is a play this week, given just how weak the tight end position is. The targets are a little bit concerning, but that varies so much from week to week. I'm ending up, when I don't adjust for any ownership, I'm ending up with about 7% Olson when I crunch. So that makes me think that, a reasonable person to have in your mix.
Also, real fast, Mark Smith in the YouTube chat is one of our regulars. Can somebody tell me what happened to the Air Yards website? Obviously, I'm a big believer in Air Yards and enjoy that website. And we had Josh Hermsmeyer on here a couple weeks ago. And unfortunately, he can't keep it updated because they changed the way the Game Center API from NFL.com works. So basically, he doesn't have the time to fix it, and they basically they broke the entire thing. So it's going to be down for the rest of the year, which sucks. So if you guys been playing the drinking game where I mentioned Air Yards multiple times, you are screwed because it's going to be less relevant moving forward unless we can find somewhere else. Let's keep going here. Got a bunch of games to hit on, and guys, hit that like button. The likes help us out quite a bit, help us get the algorithmic boost on YouTube, and also help us keep the lights on in general. So please hit that like button. Let's keep going with Arizona at Tampa Bay. Ronald Jones. A lot of people talking about Ronald Jones like he's the Jalen Samuels of the week. Alex does not have him projected too well. Still a value play, still a reasonable price, and he did get the workload last week, but we know how Tampa Bay can go. So Alex, because it's your projection that I'm really using as a jumping off point here, I'll allow you to either defend it or go the other way. But how are you feeling about Ronald Jones in a spot where people are really going to be owning him, it seems?
I feel good about Ronald Jones. I'm surprised to hear this lead in here because for a while that Peyton Barber had been kind of their lead back in Tampa, but Ronald Jones has seen majority of the work in the previous weeks. So there is a third guy in the mix, Dare Ogunbowale. Of course, if you're a WNBA fan, you're familiar with that last name from Arike. Anyway, that's probably like one of you guys watching. So he's getting more of his work in the running game than the passing, and that since Tampa was they don't run the ball a lot, that limits his opportunity a little bit. But he's cheap, and he lets you get really nice plays around him.
Okay. Look, I'm saying that off of your grades. I feel like the point grade isn't that great.
Well, yeah, it's just like to differentiate the plays, you gotta tell people if they're like a really great play or if they're just an average one. And this one is a little bit above average, I'd say.
But not Jalen Samuels, to be clear.
Man, well, Jalen Samuels last week, we got lucky as heck if you guys had him because Trey Edmonds came in and got way more work than anyone expected.
And 13 catches for on 13 targets, each at 1 yard of depth was probably not the most logical game plan, but it worked well for DFS.
That's right.
Siege, I'll ask you, Ronald Jones, how are you feeling about him? He has looked like the better runner all year. Peyton Barber, very much the definition of a replacement player at running back, and maybe proving that running backs do matter a little bit with how weak he is. Ronald Jones looks okay, though. How are you feeling about him?
I feel fine about him. I'm not in love with the situation because that's a team that when they get in the red zone, they do like to throw. And I think that, if he, for example, like what's his job security? Let's say, third play of the game, he fumbles. Are you happy or sad that you own him at that point? For me, I would be terrified because they can just go back to reliable old run up the middle for 3 yards, Peyton Barber. So when it comes to chalk running backs, I just like to know that they have the job security. And for Ronald Jones, I think it could be like one bad play and out. So I probably will end up just being on the passing attack here, but I fully understand if you're playing a bunch of teams, you want to have Ronald Jones.
So speaking of insecurity, chalk Jameis Winston, 3 words that are never the best in the world. The guy with under a 60% completion rate on the year, but he still keeps cobbling together these massive days because he's throwing it deep downfield. And he's also turned the ball over a lot, but it doesn't matter because Mike Evans is catching 700 yards a week for 5 touchdowns. So that's going to be tough to keep up. But Jameis Winston going to be very popular, and he does look like a really strong play going against Arizona's pass defense, which really not good. And Patrick Peterson was supposed to be a game changer. He got really destroyed by Emmanuel Sanders. There's some fun Twitter clips from some of the guys out there that I saw of Sanders roasting him over and over again. So the pass game here looks good. Siege, how are you feeling about rostering a chalky Jameis Winston in a spot where everybody's expecting him to play well?
I mean, I'm one of the biggest Jameis truthers out there, so there really is nothing that Jameis can do wrong. I love Jameis.
I think there are a couple things he's done wrong. To be clear.
Like what? He had 2 bad games. Like he had that awful game in London.
I mean,
and he had that bad
historically.
week 1 game.
Historically.
I mean, if you take out the London game, which I will acknowledge was a complete disaster, and the week 1 game where the flu was running through the Tampa locker room, like he's only thrown 4 interceptions on the season. It's not as consistently terrible as people want to make it out to be. He just throws the football a lot. This is a throw-first offense. There's a lot of great matchups here. There's some terrible corners on Arizona. I have no qualms rostering Jameis Winston. I don't care what the ownership number is. He's just awesome at DFS and just scoring fantasy points. Sign me up.
Alex, how are you feeling about Jameis? And feel free to not say you think all of his life decisions are perfect.
Man, Siege, this is great. This is exactly why I brought you on for these hot takes. I think that I never would live to have seen the day that Jameis Winston is projected to be the highest on quarter of the back of the week, but here we are. And I've loved Winston pretty much every week because they throw a ton, and it's all the 2 guys, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And that makes it easier to predict who to put in your lineup to win a tournament. Last week I had a ton of the 3 of them together, and it came so close to working, but I was left wanting some more. But I think that's an underrated strategy, is take both Evans and Godwin together, and if they both have big games, then Jameis obviously had a huge one. That could win you a tournament for sure, but the ownership is caught up to the situation here, so I think they're a good play, but not a sneaky one.
They're a little bit less owned than they were last week, though, for whatever it's worth.
Can I just butt in here that the problem with the Mike Evans Godwin together thing, as someone who's rostered Tampa every single week on every single slate, is that they really have a zone man mix. Like Mike Evans has just obliterated against man defenses this year, and Godwin's been destroying against zones. So it's really been kind of tough to get the 2 of them to match up so far this season. I've tried it, I think, just about every week they've been on the main slate, and it just hasn't quite worked. Like you're always like 6 or 7 points short, and I think it's just because of that man zone difference between the 2. Not that it's going to stop me from trying again this week, but I just wanted to point that out.
No, that's a good point, too. And you have noticed, I mean, if you look at the numbers, these guys' numbers have changed a little bit. Evans now leading in targets, but the deep targets also heavily favoring Evans, go up to 2.4 deep targets a game. Godwin now down to just 1 flat. So they have, you're right, like they have differentiated their roles quite a bit. And Godwin is better at kind of finding space and coverage, so it would make sense why he's a better player against zones. And Evans is just better at beating guys downfield and creating that separation, kind of like a Tyreek Hill. I have to ask the question, because I'll be playing a little bit of him, and I'm sure I'll be regretting it by roughly 1:10 p.m. East Coast time. OJ Howard in the Arizona tight end spot, where they're giving up a 42% DVOA boost to tight ends. Every tight end who's gotten an opportunity against Arizona, for the most part, has murdered them. Rhett Ellison has had big touchdowns against Arizona. So OJ Howard coming back from injury. Siege, I'll ask you first. OJ Howard, is he going to be in any lineups for you this week?
So you said a 42% boost against tight ends?
Yep, according to Football Outsiders.
So what's 42? What's 0.42 times 0? No, all jokes aside, I probably will end up here on OJ Howard. He's finally healthy. He's been hurt most of the season. It's just, as Alex mentioned, tight end is just so bad this week. You have a player of OJ Howard's talent level at that price in this situation. I think I'd be stubborn if I didn't have him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think too the athleticism that he has and just how Buda Baker just gets destroyed by every tight end seems like a nice spot for him, given his athleticism, his ability to break plays. I mean, we know him from last year. He was that guy. So, Alex, I'm selling you. Where are you on OJ Howard?
I'll throw out a little adage here. In the absence of a good tight end option, you should pick a correlated tight end option. So, I mean, if you have Jameis Winston, then having Howard is a nice boost. If you don't, I mean, he can be in your mix, but he's not really standing out because there is some competition for snaps here with Braid and Hudson, and he just hasn't really gotten that workload that you'd like this year when all is said and done.
I feel like you've never busted out that adage before, but that was a really good one. I enjoyed that.
Thanks, man.
That's like kind of the equivalent of a catcher in baseball, where it's like, yeah, if the catcher makes your lineup, that's what it is. How about the Arizona side? Kyler Murray here should be in a decent spot. We saw what Russell Wilson did last week, just annihilating Tampa Bay through the air, giving up a ton of yards every single game via passes. Tampa Bay's defense allowing 294 passing yards per game. And Kyler, the pass game is back for them because Christian Kirk is back in the mix. Andy Isabella should see more work, you would think, after he really dominated that San Francisco defense on that one play he had in that Thursday night game, the last game they played. And also Tampa Bay's run defense, one of the best in the league, been one of the ones funneling things towards the pass. So, Alex, I'll ask you, Arizona's pass game here, where are you landing with them?
I think they're in a good spot, and especially when you break down the salaries, because Kyler Murray, excellent cash play, like kind of mid-price, but he does it on the ground and through the air, and it's a decent matchup. Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald are pretty reasonably priced as well. Those are really the two guys I'm going to be looking at. Maybe a shot at Max Williams, who's been getting more playing time as the season has gone on. Yeah, the only caveat I have is that he's just going to be super popular this week. About twice the chance I have him as being the top. Actually, I adjusted this. 10% ownership, about a 7% chance of being the top stack of the week. So maybe a little bit overowned, in my opinion.
See,
Jerry, feeling about Arizona here in a spot where you'd think they'd have to score to keep up.
Yeah, when I started my research a couple days ago, I had all this intent to kind of like be starting to tout the Tampa defense as this really sneaky spot, really good defensive line against a really bad offensive line. But the more I realized, I started looking into the Arizona offense, I realized that this game really has more shootout potential than maybe even people think, and I know it's still going to be the most popular stack of the week. But Arizona hasn't turned the football over in 344 straight plays. That dates back to the first quarter in week 4. And if Kyler Murray offense just simply isn't going to be turning the football over against this Tampa defense, like they're just going to have success eventually. The Tampa secondary is just so bad that, you give someone 35, 40 attempts who's at the NFL level, they're just going to have success. So I have interest in Kirk. I think this could be a really good Larry Fitz breakout spot. He's been pretty bad all season, but this is the spot where I think he could kind of break out. So I'm pretty high on this Arizona side as well.
Yeah, I think it'd be an interesting spot here. And I agree with your take, too. Like, I think this does seem like a spot where you think Arizona could have some struggles, but Tampa Bay's just pass defense, rather, has just been so bad. The run defense is still great, blitzing at a really high clip, and that's going to make things interesting here where Kyler could really struggle. I mean, a 42% blitz rate for 52% blitz rate for Tampa Bay on the year. So Kyler is going to either thrive in that situation or he's going to have some issues, and we'll find out in just a few short hours relative to where we are right now. Let's keep going. Kansas City at Tennessee. The return of Pat Mahomes going to be back in the lineup here on the road, getting 28 implied points from Vegas right now. Going against a Tennessee team who does have a decent defense, so they have given up some production to outside receivers. Siege, I'll ask you first, how are you feeling about Mahomes in this spot, and which Kansas City players would you find the most appealing?
Yeah, Kansas City, I think, is a stack that's kind of just not been talked about enough. Tennessee, since their week 1 win against Cleveland, really hasn't been impressive at all this season. Like, I think a lot of the public perception on Tennessee is still coming off of that week 1 win. So I think that they're kind of just overrated. So I definitely think Mahomes, Kelsey, Tyreek should all be kind of in your GPP player pool as guys that you're really strongly considering this week. Because Kansas City could come out here and just throttle Tennessee pretty easily.
How are you feeling about this Kansas City spot here, Alex, where Tennessee's defense on paper does look decent, but they have given up some big games and maybe a bit of a paper tiger?
Yeah, I hate to do this, but Siege, I agree with you. I think this is a good spot. The game actually, it looks like it might be more competitive than you might expect because Kansas City's defense isn't that good. And Patrick Mahomes coming back is certainly a great sign for Tyreek Hill, Kelsey, and Watkins prospects. So I think that taking Mahomes and any two of those three guys could be a really great strategy.
And Kelsey, too, just seems like he's due for some positive TD regression. He's had, I think, 1.4 red zone targets per game, has yet to have a red zone touchdown or a red zone catch. So one would think that's going to level out for him at some point. But yeah, it does seem like a spot Kansas City slept on. I think a lot of the thing, too, is the industry-wise, we also kind of don't talk about this stuff early in the week because we didn't know Mahomes' status. Now that we know it, that could be a bit of an edge because people just have heard less about them throughout the week. Alex, Ryan Tannehill on the other side, or as our former guest of ours and on the contrary, Ian Hartitz called him, we should be calling him Ryan Tanna Thrill because every game is a roller coaster ride with Tannehill. Going against Kansas City, should have to score here. How are you feeling about Tannehill and I guess the entire offense where Derrick Henry could also have a decent spot?
Well, Tannehill hasn't been terrible so far. He's averaging close to 8 yards per pass, which is certainly encouraging. And with Corey Davis out, I think that is a boost to some of the other pass catchers like A.J. Brown in particular, but also Adam Humphries. And if you want to be really on the contrary, maybe Tajay Sharp. Jonnu Smith has been having a pretty good season, replacing Walker as their pass-catching tight end. So there's some good options here. But I'm a little surprised looking at our projected ownership because I would think Tannehill is, he's not the greatest quarterback in the world, but he's projected for twice the ownership of your average quarterback. So that's a little bit higher than I think he should be.
Siege, how are you feeling about Tennessee, and are you taking the Tanna Thrill ride?
I kind of like Derrick Henry here. I think it's a pretty sneaky spot against the Chiefs defense that, last week, during the show, I'm sure, because it was on almost every show in the world, McCaffrey or Cook. And Minnesota just decided not to run the ball at all for reasons that I still don't quite understand. But that doesn't mean Tennessee won't. Like, Tennessee is a team that loves running the football whenever possible. And if Derrick Henry can have success early, like, it could definitely continue. Okafor's still out on that defensive line. Frank Clark is still questionable. I think he's probably leaning towards playing, which would be nice. But, this is a team you can run the football against. And we've had them show up twice now this year on winning teams, on winning maker teams is running backs against the Chiefs. So I think I would lean Henry here more than, the chalk A.J. Brown or Jonnu Smith train. I think I'd rather go the other way there and attack the run game.
Yeah, Henry certainly finds ways to get that production in there. And as you mentioned, it's one of my favorite things. Carlos Hyde went nuts against the team. And Carlos Hyde actually is having a hell of a year by Carlos Hyde standards in particular. But if he can get it going against Kansas City, I'm sure that Derrick Henry can, as long as the game doesn't get completely out of hand. Let's keep going here. And again, guys, hit that like button and also go to awesemo.com/join and use the promo code CONTRARY if you want half off your first month to see all the ownership projections and data we've discussed throughout the course of this hour. Let's talk about Miami at Indianapolis. Jacoby Brissett was ruled out this morning. Brian Hoyer is priced up to be the same price as Jacoby Brissett, so you're not getting a discount there. Did kind of go off versus Pittsburgh in relief, had 3 touchdowns and some limited work. The question here is he's going against Miami. So, Siege, is he in play for you going against a Miami defense who, besides Sam Darnold, cannot stop anybody?
Oh, boy. This is a pretty sneaky spot for the Dolphins. Like, I know they just won a game last week, and everyone's going to be like, all right, now the Dolphins are going to go back to tanking. This is another pretty sneaky spot that they can steal. Like, Brian Hoyer was good in relief, but it's a whole different story coming in relief and starting a game. There's no T.Y. Hilton. There's limited pass catchers there. I couldn't get to Brian Hoyer this week. Like, there's just so many other quarterbacks at lower ownership that I actually trust than, super old Brian Hoyer.
Yeah. He's a veteran. He's been around for a while for sure. I thought he looked good in that game, I have to say. He threw the one pick, but looked pretty solid. So I'm intrigued by Brian Hoyer. But Alex, you're the tiebreaker then. How are you feeling about Brian Hoyer in this spot?
Brian Hoyer may not be someone I get to a ton, because
that was a nice way of putting it.
yeah, I mean, I actually do like some of the pieces on this team. I think that with Hoyer in instead of Brissett, there's a possibility that Indianapolis starts throwing the ball more. And you got T.Y. Hilton out, Deion Kane was waived. So now you can predict the wide receivers more easily. We got Zach, Pascal, and Rodgers as wide receiver 1 and 2. And they have Marcus Johnson as their third wide receiver. They just called him up. But last week, they ran out more 2 tight end sets instead of 3 wide receiver sets. So we saw more Doyle and Ebron routes. So I think the most likely outcome is we see Doyle and Ebron emerge more as fantasy plays, and you want to get on that train before it hits. So I think Doyle could be my favorite tight end of the week.
Oh, interesting. Would you have any Zach Pascal love? He led the team in routes last week, ran 37 routes, had a pretty decent day, and he's looked pretty good. He got 2.1 yards per route last week, only 5 targets, but he could be the guy who benefits against a weak Miami secondary.
Yeah, I mean, Pascal, another guy who's been having a tremendous season. Of course, he hasn't played full-time the whole season, but he's caught 70% of his passes for 17 yards a pop. And that's just way better than is humanly possible, especially when you have these quarterbacks throwing the ball. So I'm expecting some regression there, but I think he's a good play, but not an excellent one.
Siege, how are you feeling about the wide receivers here? And also Marlon Mack, who's also going to be theoretically a beneficiary of if Indianapolis can put it away, if Miami doesn't keep it competitive, or even if they do. But you'd think that Marlon Mack is going to be heavily involved.
Yeah, I think Mack is a good option, but they still have 2 other guys in Nines and Wilkins that they can mix in. I'm kind of on the Alex train. I think the tight end here is pretty sneaky. I also like Doyle more than Ebron, so I'm hoping there aren't that many people watching this show, because I agree with you that I kind of think that's a really good spot. I think the targets there are pretty safe, especially from Brian Hoyer, who's not a guy that's going to just start throwing it 50 yards down the field. So I definitely could see the 10 catch, 100-yard touchdown game for Jack Lowe.
And the Miami side, you did mention some interest in them. How are you feeling about them? No Preston Williams, who was a great play last week. Was very happy to have him in some lineups. But he's out for the year, hurt his knee, which sucks because he actually was looking legitimately good. But Mike Gesicki's been running more out of the slot, which should help him out a bit. Devontae Parker, maybe a little bit more of a concentration of targets for these guys. Which Miami players would you like the most, Siege?
Yeah, so I actually was on Devontae Parker last week too. I've been on Devontae Parker for a while now. The guy he finally got a price increase this week, but he'd been sitting around 4K, drawing 6+ targets every week and getting red zone targets. 5K is probably the point where I kind of just start going, do I really need to have him? But he'll definitely be in the mix, and I'm sure he'll find his way onto a couple teams, just because he does have those condensed targets and potential red zone opportunities. But I'm not as wild about him as 5K as I was maybe when he was like 4K.
Alex, how about you? Any Miami guys? Any Kalen Ballage, the explosive running back who should be taking over the workload for Mark Wahlberg?
Oh, you already know I have a ton of Kalen Ballage here.
How could he not? 2 yards per attempt.
Actually, no, I think Ballage is a reasonable play. With Walton suspended for 4 games, now they're left having to go to Ballage. They have Myles Gaskin as probably the backup to Ballage, but just being the starting running back and Ballage being a good pass catcher, I can see him having a pretty good week. And Parker I like as well. And beyond Parker, it's a little bit tough to predict who gets the work. Albert Wilson is probably one of their most talented guys, but they haven't played him a lot due to injury this year. So then they have Allen Hurns and Jakeem Grant behind him. And I'm not really sure which one of these guys will be on the field more. It could be just a normal rotation. But Albert Wilson, I kind of feel like he's worth taking some shots on at 3,300 and 4,500. Basically the minimum across the industry. He's only 6,400 on FantasyDraft. These are dirt cheap prices.
Yeah, last week, Hurns got 19 routes, Wilson 16, Grant 10. Wilson seems like they've been reluctant to give him a full workload because of his injuries, but I know you've mentioned him a bunch of times. He's an explosive player who got Brock Osweiler to some big days, so certainly not crazy that he can go off again. I'll turn the floor over to you, Alex, and ask you if there are any other players or games you feel like we should hit on, maybe Nick Chubb going against Buffalo or Detroit and Chicago, which looks like it'll be a rock fight. But any of these other games jumping out to you?
I feel like this LA at Pittsburgh game could be worth looking at. I mean, Brandon Cooks being out, that's big because I think that just is going to translate to more Kupp and Woods targets. So I really like those guys. I think they're good plays this week.
Siege, anything jumping out to you that we haven't hit on so far?
I'm going to save the 6K receiver for the contrarian segment. But yeah, I'm with Alex on Robert Woods. I think this is definitely one of those spots where he's been kind of forgotten about just because Kupp has had such a good year. But this is a really good matchup now with no Brandon Cooks. Don't even mind Josh Reynolds if he's still priced down. I can't say I've actually looked at his price this week. What did they price him at?
I also just want to really quickly mention Buffalo and Cleveland, the running backs in this game. Devin Singletary at his price point, he's going to be owned, but he did get that workload last week. Could be a risk that Frank Gore presses him and takes it back, but he looks pretty good. And Nick Chubb on the other side, I think that Buffalo run defense has started to look worse. Their numbers by the week in the run defense do come up. They're up to 4.4 yards per rush. Rushing TD rates jumped as well. And they're only now just a 67 grade from PFF. They were much better graded earlier in the year. So could be a game where the running backs have some value. So I would take a look at those guys this week. But as Siege mentioned, this is the time where you're going to shine, my friend, because you are all Mr. Hot Takes. So I'll turn it to you first. Who would be your contrarian QB pick for week number 10?
By the way, Josh Reynolds 3,800. I love that play in tournaments because he actually has a really deep ADOT and will get targets in that system. So I love that. Contrarian quarterback pick. I think I'm going to go with Matt Ryan. I know Alex is a little pessimistic about that 19 team total, but every time that if I start pushing it up a little bit in my model and I'm like, they get to 23, Atlanta just starts flying up the board. And I just think 19 is just, I think that's public. I don't think that's like sharp consensus on Atlanta. I think that they deserve a 22 team total here. And when I do that, they just explode my model.
Alex, how about you? Who'd be your contrarian QB pick?
I like the Ryan call. I think that he could be sneaky given how much they throw. Mine, I'm going to Kyle Allen. I kind of alluded to how much I like him this week, but we just keep seeing Christian McCaffrey have big week after big week. I think that the most likely outcome is McCaffrey is the guy in Carolina, but if we get some long touchdown throws, it could be Allen week, and I'm playing for these kind of rare situations with my contrarian plays, so I really like the price points there.
Great year for the Allen QBs. Brandon Allen looking good last week. Kyle winning games. Josh winning games. I'm proud of all my Allen boys. They're doing great. I'm going to go, you guys really blanched at him, but I'm going to go Brian Hoyer. I watched enough of that game. I really was intrigued by what I saw there. They seemed like they were letting him throw it more for whatever reason they do Brissett. Maybe they feel like they need to protect him a bit more. But yeah, Hoyer to me looked really sharp in that game, and they don't need to throw as much in this spot, but I do think they will throw enough for him to get production. So even if he doesn't go off, I do think Zach Pascal or Chester Rogers can have a decent day, or the tight ends. I mean, there's a lot of options here that can have decent days. Alex, go back to you. Contrarian running back pick. Who would it be for week 10?
Kalen Balazs. I think that the opportunity to see this week as kind of the lead back. Now, this play could go horribly wrong, and this is why it's a contrarian play, is because we don't know really what Miami's going to do here. They could run out some other guy more than we'd expect, kind of like Pittsburgh did last week with Trey Edmonds. There's that potential, but if he is the lead back this week, I think it's valuable enough for his price point to be overweight.
That makes sense. Siege, who would it be for you?
Yeah, Kalen Balazs is the guy. Like I just, the public perception is so down on him, where there's a 3,800 number one running back who actually has had pass game work, and like no one wants to play him. Mm-hmm. Like that's how bad the Twitter clips got. And look, if they wanted Myles Gaskin to be a thing, like they would have just played. Like they're bad. They would just play him over Balazs. Like Balazs did enough to get benched, and Gaskin still wasn't getting anywhere. So I feel a little more confident in the Balazs workload here, whether we want it or not. So I think it has to be Balazs here.
Okay, yeah, that seems fair. And he's going to get the work. He's getting the red zone work either way too. So certainly going to have some benefits there. Man, it's tough week for contrarian running backs. I guess with Nick Chubb's ownership down, I would go to him. He's now under 10%. I think had him a little bit higher earlier in the week, but Chubb, I think people may be a bit spooked off by having Kareem Hunt in the mix, and Chubb has just been so good that I think maybe Kareem Hunt takes that Hilliard workload. And then we still have Chubb getting his work, and that would be my hope. That little ownership, I think it just seems too low for a guy with Chubb's talent. But we can't all have Kalen Balaj. So Siege, turn it back to you for wide receiver. Who would it be for Week 10?
Yeah, so I've alluded to this a while, and I'm sure this is going to get a lot of smirk and smickering in the chat, but I just can't say no to Odell Beckham this week. If I had told you before Week 1 that Odell Beckham would be like 6% owned at 6,100, you all would have laughed at me. The talent is just too good here. The matchup is just absolutely brutal, but Cleveland's just a bad football team, and they've just not been getting Odell Beckham the ball. I just have to think that this is the week where they're just going to give him 12 targets, win, lose, draw. They just don't care, and they just got to stop. They just got to give him the ball. So 6,100 for Odell. The price is just too cheap for the talent.
Yeah, going against Tre'Davious White, but certainly Odell could beat any coverage if they force feed him the ball like Baker Mayfield seems like he wants to. So it certainly could be a spot. Alex, how about you, contrarian wide receiver?
I'll give it a 2-pack because I can't really differentiate that much for these guys. But now that the red rifle is out in Cincinnati, Ryan Finley's in. I mean, a pretty poor quarterback in most likelihood. I don't think he's played much in the NFL yet. But the guys that he's throwing to aren't bad. Alex Erickson, he's had 3 good games in a row. He's getting a lot of targets, doing a lot with them. Alden Tate, kind of a deeper threat, and he hasn't had a big game yet, but he's been getting the targets. Tyler Boyd is probably my 3rd pick there, but I like Tate and Erickson a little bit more, so I think I might take some shots there.
And for me, I'm going to run back a guy who ruined me last week, ruined a lot of great lineups. Robbie Anderson, you son of a bitch. Sam Darnold, you other son of a bitch. You both are back in my lives for one more week because I think the Giants are going to bring a little bit less pressure than Miami did. That Jets offensive line cannot defend anything at all, so this is really harrowing, and I won't have a ton of him. But I do think Robbie Anderson's priced well enough to have big upside, given what we know of him and his deep ball ability. So do it for me, Robbie. All right, Siege, fade of the week. This is where you really shine. Who's the hot take?
Oh boy. I mean, I said I was probably out on McCaffrey, and the more I think about it, he's just not going to find his way into any lineups again this week. And it was not fun last week, but I think I have to fade him again this week, as much as that scares the living hell out of me.
Yeah, that seems fair. Alex, how about you? Who'd be your fade of the week?
Wow. These are some good options that are highly owned, but I see one that's really standing out as below the rest, and I'm talking about Mike Gesicki. We have him projected for 16%.
That's such a cheat code. Come on, that's not a hot take. Come on.
All right. I was good enough the ownership projections, but I'll give another one just for usage. But Gesicki is somehow projected for 16% ownership. I've seen a lot of people talking about him. Anyway. My number 2 fade of the week.
It's a lot harder when you don't take a value tight end that has like 12 career targets.
Yeah, my fade of the week is Rhett Ellison at 10%.
Anyway, I guess if I had to go down the list a little bit more, I would say Devin Singletary. Josh Allen gets a lot of the running work in Buffalo, and Gore probably will get more carries than he did last week, so I'm just not adding this up and getting a great play here.
All right, mine is going to be, I'll go spicy too. I'll go Alvin Kamara for mine. I just think he's going to lose enough of the workload. I think the run defense has shown me enough, and they do defend pass-catching running backs fairly well. I think it's an okay spot. To be clear, I wouldn't have none of him, but I do think I'll have less in the field of him just because I think he's high priced and I have to find some savings somewhere. So that's my spot. Siege, we'd always like to turn the floor over to our guests here so you can plug everything you want. You have Fantasy Cruncher, you have your Twitch stream. So tell people where they should be following you and what they should be checking out from you.
Yeah, Twitch stream Monday through Friday, moving from 3:30 to 3 to allow people to watch that and then watch the game plan here at Osimo. So yeah, I'm in Fantasy Cruncher Discord almost all the time. So check that out. And then Twitch, the Siege DFS, 3 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. Mostly NBA, but we'll talk some football, I'm sure, at some point.
Yeah, so go check out the Siege DFS on Twitter right now. You can see him in the tweet that Alex had earlier as well. Siege doing a lot of great work on there. And Alex, anything else you want to say to the fine folks before it call quits here for Week 10?
Yeah, thanks Siege, and of course thanks Fantasy Cruncher. I just noticed we have Siege's handle misspelled here, so make sure you put the I before the E in the Siege.
No, E before the I.
Oh, it is? Man.
Yeah, I can't spell.
I'm getting so
I.
confused here. All right. So just disregard what I just said. We got it right. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching. Thanks Fantasy Draft. Main event is one of my favorite tournaments of every week because, and not just because of the Hooters sponsorship, I'll have to say, it's because you win more when you cash on there than any other site. So I think you should be spending your money there.
Yeah, so go to fantasydraft.com right now. Use that promo code AWESEMO. Support. I like Hooters and Fantasy Draft, so I think support both them equally. Support the show. Go check them out and really do it for your bankroll more than anything else. You should be saving on Rake if you can. And of course, we'll be back again with you guys next week. I'll be back tomorrow on the NFL Live Before Lock. Alex going on before that with Lofty and Ben Rasa doing the deeper dive for the NFL. One of the best shows to watch. I watch it right when I wake up every Sunday morning. So go check it out on there. We'll be back with you guys again very soon. So hope you guys have a good week 10. And of course, goodbye.